Our first recipe is a fresh strawberry chicken salad. And this was delicious, guys. We're using it for a dinner, a nighttime meal for Rod and I. And starting off with just greens we have in the garden. So easy enough. And it's summertime, so strawberries, a bunch of fruit, just sounded really delicious. And from the healthy angle, the dressing is a yogurt-based dressing. Now, it did call for olive oil, which I ended up putting a little bit in. Next time I will make it without the olive oil. We're gonna chop up some, slice up, chop whatever, some strawberries in here. Then we're gonna add roughly 3/4 of a cup of blueberries and mandarin oranges, which we have mandarins in the fridge. So I'm just going to peel, segment, and then cut each segment in half. I only had about a half a cup of the orange slices. Hi guys, Jackie from Famished Farm, and we are back in the kitchen this week working on our recipe stash. And this week it's kind of thick because we've got a new part of the recipe stash we're going to be working on. But first, let me just tell you why we're doing this. We have our weekly meal plan, and we're trying to stick to the meal plan because it keeps us on budget. It allows us to use the things in our freezer, refrigerator, pantry, canning shelves, things that might end up going stale or going bad that we would have to throw away. So it keeps us on top of our ingredients, and it just is nice to have what you're gonna make for dinner. Like if you've got 30 minutes to get dinner on the table, it's nice to know what you've got and that you've got all the ingredients you need to make it. So for this week, we're gonna do some summertime favorites out on the grill. Rod's gonna do hot dogs, he's gonna do pork chops, and the cordon chicken bleu sandwiches that are part of our summertime rotation. And for Meatless Monday, I have spaghetti pie or white chicken chili in the freezer that I'm gonna be making use of. I'm not sure which one quite yet. So our new recipes from Sally's Baking Addiction. We are doing her fresh strawberry, can't say that, chicken salad. And why did I pick this one? I really liked her homemade poppy seed dressing made with Greek yogurt. And also just, it's summertime, so who doesn't want some strawberries? I can't say strawberries. Blueberries and mandarin oranges in a salad. It just looks really good. Our second recipe from foodnetwork.com, now I really can't talk. Our second recipe is from foodnetwork.com. It's a Our second recipe from foodnetwork.com is a healthy chicken fajita stuffed pepper. And I picked this one because we still have some Anaheim peppers in the refrigerator that I would like to use up. And this uses chicken thighs, which I always have. So that just seemed like a good one. Now, the third recipe is part of a meal plan that I purchased over 5 years ago, probably, for diabetics. And this tends to be low carb, keto type recipes. And I have moved this, all over creation, from Florida to Illinois and now down to Alabama. And why did I hang on to this? Because it has pretty good sounding recipes. For instance, almond parmesan crusted pork chops, simple salsa verde chicken with grilled cheesy zucchini. Delicious. But the recipe we're making this week is almond crusted shrimp cakes with baby spinach, which I'll be using kale if I've got it in the freezer, and if not, I'll just be using my greens from the garden. So that's what we're making this week. Stick around, let's get to cooking. Okay, we're back with our sliced almonds, about a 1/4 cup. These I had in the pantry, so that was good to use them up. And then I've got a chicken breast. It looks like a chicken breast that I've sliced in half and just cooked in the microwave and seasoned with salt and pepper. We're gonna chunk that up. I didn't weigh this. I just kind of went by feel what was right for 2 servings for Rod and I. So You call it 8 ounces, I'll call it 2 cups. We'll meet somewhere in the middle. But I do reserve this other chicken breast for a lunchtime salad. Now, the dressing calls for 1/3 of a cup of Greek yogurt, and then 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, and then it does call for olive oil. Now, in hindsight, I would not add any olive oil. Let's see, I added a tablespoon here. Let's see if I went for the 2 tablespoons. So yes, I will leave off all of the olive oil next time. Then there is 2 tablespoons of honey, and my honey is crystallizing, so I think I warmed it up last time. There's enough on the top there that I can get 2 tablespoons out. We're gonna add some dry mustard, just a 1/4 teaspoon. I'm just gonna eyeball it here. That was the poppy seeds, 1½ teaspoons of poppy seeds. And then it's gonna call for salt, and that is probably a little more salt than I meant to put in, but isn't this beautiful? And this was absolutely delicious, guys. We had enough left over that I think we both had it for lunch the next day too. Our second recipe is healthy chicken fajita stuffed peppers from Food Network. And I had planned this meal to use up the Anaheim peppers I had in the refrigerator. But when I walked by the green pepper stand, oh my gosh, this enormous green pepper was there, and it looked perfect for stuffed peppers. Now, I know most people leave the stem on when they make stuffed peppers. I'm just gonna cut that out of there, and I'm pretty diligent. I don't like the ribs and the seeds and peppers when I prepare them anyway for salads or stuffed peppers. So I'm going to remove the stems. You guys be as diligent as you want to be. And on the hot pepper, and this is really more of a mild pepper, I always remove the ribs and the seeds also. This ticked the healthy box for me because it's really replacing a flour tortilla with a pepper. I thought that was a great idea. Now I'm going to go ahead and slice up or chop up everything that I need to get ready for the recipe. So that was a 1/2 of a white onion. It calls for a large, and I don't like that much white onion. And then I went ahead and squeezed the lime. Now, it does call for boneless, skinless chicken thighs, which I'm going to go through and trim off as much of the fat here as I can, and then use my scissors to chop those into just bite-sized pieces. But I had an idea afterward that why not just use ground chicken for this? For this particular meal, it would be quite a time saver as opposed to cutting up the chicken thighs. So if you're in a pinch, definitely think about using ground chicken. Now we're going to spice that chicken. We're going to use some ground cumin and chili powder. It calls for a teaspoon of cumin, 2 teaspoons of chili powder, some salt and pepper. I remember the salt and pepper after I start mixing. And again, salt to your liking. I did do a little bit of salt there, lots of pepper. Now let's move over to the stove. I'm going to preheat the oven on the way and pull out the largest oven-safe cast iron that you have, or skillet that you have. And this one is not huge, but it's heavy enough for me, and it does fit the 1 big pepper in it and then the Anaheim. So you're just going to put your chicken in a single layer and cook that for a couple minutes. It will just start to brown on the other side. And then put your onions in there, and you're going to give them a stir and cook everything for about 3-4 minutes more. Now I've washed out my pan that I used for the raw chicken, and we're going to go ahead and put this mixture into that pan. And then we're going to rinse out the skillet and put that other tablespoon of oil in the pan. And then add your rice, 1/2 a cup of the cheese, 1/2 of your lime juice, and then season it to taste, your salt and pepper. Okay, on this step though, I probably would not add the cheese to the rice mixture in the pan. It's just gonna stick. So I would throw that into the already cooked chicken mixture instead of the rice, but just fry your rice like you see here, just without that cheese in it. Okay, and here is where I kind of screw up the next step. You're supposed to mix the rice and the chicken mixture, but for some reason I got it into my head that this was a new way that they were preparing these peppers, that I had to put the rice mixture right into my peppers first. And then, of course, when I reread it, I knew it was wrong. So I'm going to unfill all of these peppers that I've just filled and mix that into the chicken mixture. So here I am, back on track. Get that rice mixture out of your peppers, back into the chicken mixture, and stir this up really good so it's well combined. Because the chicken mixture is all prepared, all cooked through, I go ahead and sample it right now, and I decide it needs a little more salt and pepper. And then stuff your peppers, or in my case, restuff the peppers. I already added that other portion of oil into the skillet, so I'm not adding any additional oil. You're gonna just let that sit on the stovetop till it starts popping and sizzling. And then I'm gonna go ahead and add the cheese at this step and then throw them in the oven. But the recipe does call for baking for 20 minutes before adding the cheese. Okay, so I am just pulling these out of the oven. Make sure you've got all your hot pads ready. This is super hot. We're gonna sprinkle with the remaining lime juice, and then the recipe also calls for optional guacamole or pico. We're just gonna use the sour cream. And I rate this one really delicious. We served it with refrieds. Our final recipe, almond crusted shrimp cakes with baby spinach. Now, this one is another healthy recipe. This is out of the purchase meal plan. And I know that I'm gonna have some issues because it's a 1 serving recipe and I've got a pound of shrimp, so I'm gonna be quadrupling the recipe. And what I accounted for is I knew I wouldn't need 4 eggs, so I only used 2 in the recipe, but the mixture was still pretty gloppy. So it calls for paleo mayonnaise, which I don't have. I'm just using regular mayonnaise. This is the ground almonds or almond flour. And I end up adding more almond flour than the recipe calls for because the mixture is just too moist. Another issue I kind of had is it was supposed to go into the refrigerator right after mixing this up. And I missed that step, and so the first 4 patties that went onto the stovetop actually had not been refrigerated at all. But I can tell you the refrigeration didn't let anything firm up. It's not like that almond flour is going to absorb a lot of the liquid. So in the future, I've got a notation to cut the mayonnaise in half, use half the eggs, and I think it would be okay at that point. So this is the tail end of a bottle of horseradish that I'm using, and I did put the entire 4 teaspoons of horseradish in that the recipe called for. We're going to also add a little bit of chopped dill. I'm using dried. My dill hasn't come in yet. And instead of the chives, I've got still some green onions in the freezer, so I'm going to use some of those. Some paprika. Then salt and pepper to taste. When I'm cooking with shrimp, I don't need the salt, so I leave that out, but very generously pepper. I had planned on substituting frozen kale, which I apparently have already used that up, so I'm just using greens out of my garden, and it calls for 4 cups, and I think I did pretty much the full 4 cups worth. Mix everything up real well, and it's at this point that I decide it's still pretty gloppy. Let me add, I think I added 2 more tablespoons of the almond flour. Mix that up again, and then I'm going to move over to my stovetop where again I've got my cast iron ready to go. We're going to put a little bit of oil into the skillet. In this case, we're using coconut oil. And then I'm using my trusty ice cream scoop to form the patties. And it's, I would say, a scantily full ice cream patty. Go ahead and you're gonna let those cook for 3 to 4 minutes on each side. In this case, I cooked them beautifully for 3 minutes on each side before I flipped them. And at some point after flipping these patties, I reread the recipe and then noticed that I was supposed to put the mixture into the refrigerator to firm up. So that mix has gone into the refrigerator, and now I'm just attempting to get these out of the pan without breaking them into pieces. And honestly, they did hold together pretty good. This is more a function of me being inept when it comes to anything that is crab cake, salmon cake, fish cake, whatever. I just have trouble flipping patties of this kind. Here we're coming out of the refrigerator again. I put a little more oil in the pan, and we've got 3 more of these big patties. While the last 3 patties continue to cook, let me just tell you, very good recipe. I'll post in the description what I'm going to do the next time I make these. And I end up serving them with lime wedges because I don't have lemon. This was delicious, fresh, summery, delicious. Make it, guys. I made several changes or substitutions. I didn't have spinach, so I used the greens I had on hand. I found my avocado was not ripe, so I had to pitch that. And I would next time leave out all the olive oil on the dressing. Now, also you could make this vegetarian if you wanted to. Just leave out the chicken. Use a can of black beans. This was a great idea. Instead of having Mexican with flour tortillas, to use your whatever filling is, use it as a stuffed pepper. And the only thing I would change or make note of is use ground chicken instead of having to cut up all the chicken thighs. The ground chicken I don't usually have in the freezer, but if I ever had to buy chicken to make this, definitely I would go the ground chicken route. And we just served it with sour cream. And if you had guacamole or pico, that would be that much more delicious. This will definitely go into the rotation. Our almond crusted, of course, made more changes to this. I did not have baby spinach, so I used the greens I had in the garden. I was also thinking freezer, this would be a perfect use for that too. Now, I will make note in the description of the changes I will make for the next time I make this. I'm going to make a 3 times, cut back the mayonnaise and the eggs substantially. And I think it'll just trim it up, make it a little easier to handle going into the pan, and try it.